finally got her happy ending. So I just finished reading The Wonder Boy of Whistlestop, and it was so good. It was probably one of the most satisfying books as far as characters go that I've ever read. Let's talk about that.
So fun.
So, The Wonder Boy of Whistlestop is a follow-up on Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistlestop Cafe by Fannie Flagg, and it largely follows Buddy from the first book and his daughter, Ruthie. The book starts off right around when Ruthie was born, and we get a few chapters talking about her childhood, meeting Itchy, growing up, getting married, and having kids, and at the same time, we're following her parents, Buddy and Peggy, as they grow old, and we're also jumping back in time to see what's going on in Whistlestop in the 30s and 40s, and what's happening with Itchy and Ruth and the whole town. It's written a lot like Fried Green Tomatoes, except even more complicated because there's even more characters that we're following, and we don't get the framing device of half the story being told in book as a story. But I will talk about that later. Synopsis.
In summary, I told you so.
The main plot of the book is Ruthie feeling lost after her husband and mother die, and her children have grown up and left home. Ruthie's in a really similar place as Evelyn was in the first book. She's living next to her mean mother-in-law, her father's nearby in a nursing home, and she worries for him. And Ruthie isn't sure what to do with herself as a young widower until her father decides to run away from the nursing home to go to Birmingham. One day after church, Bud decides, instead of getting on the nursing home bus, he's going to take a taxi to the train station and ride down to Birmingham, hoping to be home by dinner. And at first, he has a great time. He makes a new friend and he gets to Birmingham just fine. But then he decides he wants to see Whistlestop again. So he gets another taxi, which takes him part of the way, until he decides to get out and walk and gets lost and ends up losing his prosthetic arm. And luckily he's found and taken to the hospital, and Ruthie has to rush down from her home in Atlanta, Georgia to be with her father.
I ran away.
We get to see glimpses of Ruthie's life as she tries to carry on as a widow. We get to see Bud move on as a widower, and we get to jump back in time to also see glimpses of Itchy and Ruth's life together. And a big thread that we follow with Ruth and Itchy is the River Club, which is a place basically for all sorts of shady activities that Itchy likes to visit. Until Ruth puts her foot down and told her she'd leave her if she kept going there and coming home drunk every night. So Itchy agrees, and she only ever goes back there once to get Buddy's dog when he's 6 and he's just lost his arm.
Arms off! No, it isn't.
And while Bud and Ruthie are in Birmingham, they make the news since they issued a missing persons report for Bud. And Evelyn sees it, and this is where we find out that her life has gotten a lot more satisfying. She ended up selling Mary Kay cosmetics until she became such a good salesperson that she started winning cars, and then she decided, why not open a Cadillac dealership, since she now had plenty of Cadillacs. And that made enough money for Evelyn and her husband Ed to travel for a few years until Ed got sick and they decided to return home. Then they lived their life for a few years until Ed died, and when the story takes place, Evelyn has just sold her Cadillac dealership and now she's just having fun. And when she hears about Bud in the news, she calls the hospital he's staying at and they get her in touch with Ruthie and they decide to meet up. And that is so satisfying. We spent all of Fried Green Tomatoes with Evelyn hearing about these people. So to finally see her meet them and watch them become friends in the book is so great. And Evelyn and Ruthie become great friends. They keep in touch after Ruthie and Bud go back to Atlanta. And for a while, life continues on.
Life goes on.
But the River Club plays a bigger role in the story later on, after Evelyn and Ruth decide they need a project, and they decide Evelyn will buy the town of Whistlestop and fix it up, and for a while things are great. They're having fun fixing up the town and planning how they'll develop it, and surprising Bud with the news that he gets a house in Whistlestop and he'll get to return home. But right after they tell Bud about their plan, they get the news that there's another plot of land between Whistle Stop and the highway, which would be the town's main artery for utilities and getting people there. And because no one's quite sure who owns the land, they can't move forward. So their plans come to a halt and everyone's left kind of floundering after they all invested so much into this project. But right in the 11th hour, everything comes full circle when the wife of the friend Bud made on the train, who is a first responder, finds out that some of her colleagues found Bud's arm. As it turns out, Bud was really close to home, and he ended up losing his arm under the tree where Itchy used to get her honey, and where she stored some secrets that were also found along with Bud's arm.
Arm's off. No, it isn't.
This is where things come really full circle with the River Club, too. We get to see the night that finally had Itchy deciding not to go back, when she got drunk and lost almost everything in a poker game. And things got so bad that she ended up betting on the cafe as her Hail Mary, and luckily for her, it paid off. She won and most importantly kept the cafe. Less importantly, and kind of a pain for Itchy, is that she also won a big chunk of land that she knows she can't tell anyone about, since she's already on the verge of losing Ruth. If she found out Itchy bet the cafe, that would be the nail in the coffin for their relationship. So Itchy takes the deed and hides it in her honey tree, only for that deed to be what's found with Bud's arm, and for that land to be the space that was cutting off Whistle Stop from the highway. So the book ends with the project picking back up, and Ruthie, Evelyn, and Bud end up finishing the rebuild of the town, and Ruthie and Bud move there along with a bunch of people whose families once lived in Whistle Stop. And Ruthie's happy running the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Nice little cafe.
Alright, on to writing. This was such a good book. It was so fun, and as I said, so satisfying. And that was all thanks to the characters. This book is basically the opposite of a plot-driven book. It's all characters. Their actions keep everything moving, and they don't move the book in a traditional way. Their lives meander, and so does the story. But the characters are so fun and likable that the book never feels boring. Fanny Flagg is amazing at writing characters with big personalities. It almost reminds me of anime, because in anime, all of those characters also have big personalities, but in an entirely different way. Anime is more tropey, the smart guy, the funny guy, the likable jerk, while Fanny Flagg's characters don't fit into those same categories, and that helps them feel real, like friends you might actually meet in real life.
I'm your friend!
And Fanny Flagg is also amazing at taking the little things from people, like Bud's love of animals or Peggy's frog collection, and making that one of the many through lines of their characters without it dominating who they are. And these are also characters who speak their minds and say openly when something makes them happy, and for the most part are nice to each other, which is so fun and so charming. How often can you just strike up a conversation with someone on a train, telling a stranger about your childhood without worrying about boring them? Bud does it, and that was one of the most fun chapters, just reading their dialogue as they sit on the train.
Come the train.
With that said, I can't decide if I'm frustrated or charmed with how the story handled Ruth and Itchy's relationship. I gave Fried Green Tomatoes a pass because it was written in the 80s, and if their story was a queer love story, it was revolutionary for the time. But this book holds their relationship in the same light that leaves the reader filling in the gaps how they will. We get the same hints that Ruth and Itchy were more than friends, but nothing else. And this book doesn't get the same pass a book written 40 years ago does. If anything, it loses points because so many other people and companies have done the queer baiting without any payout. But I also know that's largely just me. Fanny Flagg has never said that Itchy or Ruth are gay. That's largely the fans speculating. So that raises the question of if this is queerbaiting because the source material can so obviously be interpreted that way, or if queerbaiting needs external interference from the creator claiming something's gay without that follow-up to count. It's a hard question, one that I don't have the answer to.
I don't have an answer.
But that question didn't make me like Is Your Ruth any less. And as frustrating as it was not getting the payout from their love story, they're such likable characters that I was just happy to get any sort of their story, no matter what it was. And overall, the Wonder Boy of Whistlestop was so good, and it held up well to the legacy that Fried Green Tomatoes left. If you want to read a book with amazing characters and that can teach you how to stay true to your characters as you and they grow and change, this is the book. So go read The Wonder Boy of Whistlestop.